He not only insulted Brian Kemp quite a lot, he also insulted his wife, Marty. And that's a thing you don't do in Georgia, which has put wavering Republicans, if you like, even more in doubt about whether they should really bother to come out for Trump.
As anyone who pays attention to US politics will have heard some version of this claim. The 2024 election will be decided by a small number of voters in a few key states. We've all heard it, haven't we? In 2020, Joe Biden turned a handful of states from red to blue to defeat the then President Donald Trump. The difference between victory and defeat was just a tiny fraction of voters in those states. And in 2024, it could again be the small margins in these same states that are the difference between another Trump Republican presidency or a win for the Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee. Here to take us through it is David Charter, Associate US Editor of The Times. Hello, David.
Greetings, Rick, from Washington, D.C.
Always good to speak to you, although normally late at night, which is, kind of better for you, your time, isn't it? I suppose most of the time. But here we are again. Are we still at that number? 9 states that are going to decide this on November the 5th?
Oh, I would say it's an absolute maximum of 9. And there's a reason why the campaigns have been focusing already a lot on Pennsylvania, more in the north, and Georgia more in the south. And that's because they are both seen as the absolute keys really to the door of the White House. The reason for that is that Pennsylvania was extremely close and has a large number of votes in the Electoral College that decides the final outcome. So it's not the overall majority of which presidential candidate wins the popular vote, or we would have had probably 2 terms of Hillary Clinton. In fact, each state has a weighted number of votes in what's called the Electoral College based on its size and the number of voters in it. So Pennsylvania has 19 votes in that Electoral College, and you can imagine lots of different totals for among the 50 states. The candidate needs to get to 240. That's the magic number. And Pennsylvania, being so close and being so big, is as I say, seen as the absolute key in the north to what's known as the Blue Wall, one of the 5 states that Biden flipped. So we'll see Kamala Harris back there tomorrow, actually, with Joe Biden. Biden's still pretty popular in Pennsylvania. It's where he was born, in Scranton. We hear a lot about Scranton Joe over here. But they'll be on the other side in Pittsburgh, another city that's quite blue. But what the Democrats need to do to win Pennsylvania is turn out their latent support in the big cities of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. If they can really get those Democrats there to the polls, they probably get over the line in Pennsylvania, whereas a lot of effort going on with the Trump campaign in Georgia. That was the one where he put a lot of pressure on officials after Biden narrowly won to find him 11,780 votes to try and flip it back after the votes have been counted.
Well, that's an issue for him, though, isn't it, Georgia? Because Trump launched a tirade against Georgia's popular governor, Brian Kemp, blaming him for his defeat, didn't he, after the 2020 election when he couldn't find those votes?
And he's never let it go. And Brian, this is a weird, there's that word again on the American election. This is a mistake by Trump.
It's got you. It's got you, David.
It got me. It's a weird way of going about winning Georgia, because Brian Kemp, the governor, is still there, and he's very, very popular. He won handsomely his re-election, and he's still not best friends with Trump, who went to a rally in Atlanta earlier. Well, let's say earlier this week, at the start of August, and he not only insulted Brian Kemp quite a lot, he also insulted his wife, Marty, and that's a thing you don't do in Georgia, which has put wavering Republicans, if you like, even more in doubt about whether they should really bother to come out for Trump, as Brian Kemp says he wants them to do. Brian Kemp says he wants a Republican victory up and down the ticket, but Trump just won't let go of the personal animus.
Do you think it's fair to say that this US election is policy light, or are we just not getting it on this side of the Atlantic? Kamala Harris has been criticized for not talking about policy, more about personality, and emphasizing her competence after stepping out of the shadows from the vice president role, where her popularity was pretty low, to be fair, and Trump as well. How much policy are we actually hearing on the campaign trail?
I think it's tempting to see it as policy light, because certainly at this stage, Kamala Harris is still at the point where she's introducing herself to the electorate. She's doing that touchy-feely, hopey thing that candidates tend to do when they launch their campaigns, to try and skate across the surface and come across as attractive individuals to those people who are perhaps not paying so much attention. However, they're really offering two very different paths forward for America, with their policy programs such as they are. I think it's another reason I should say is that Harris is so new. We don't really seem to know a lot about her, although she does seem to be sticking with the Biden program that she was part of. But if you think about it, on immigration, Trump is promising mass deportations, the roundup of every single person who's in the country irregularly without the correct papers. It's going to be millions and millions. Could be 10 million people by some accounts would be rounded up and put in camps at the border and kicked out goodness knows where. Whereas Harris is promising a path to citizenship for most people who are in the country who have been behaving themselves and perhaps working and paying taxes. So very, very big difference on immigration. On abortion, of course, they've been a completely different proposals or completely different ideas until recently, because Trump was very proud of appointing the judges who ended the 50-year access, the guarantee, the right to abortion in America, and left it up to the individual states. But he's seen what a vote loser that can be in the midterm elections, and has started coming up with all sorts of ideas about mollifying the tough approach on abortion, including offering free IVF for all Americans, which would, by some calculations, add billions of dollars to the national debt. So he's
cost
really
a few quid. Trying
to find a way back on that thing that was a big dividing line. So there are some massive dividing lines between them, I think, for facing the American public.
David, just before we let you go, what are Trump's tactics against Kamala Harris? Has he honed in now on how he's going to take on this woman who's basically thrown his whole strategy and seen the polls change so much?
Yeah, it's pretty clear that Trump's been totally discombobulated by this. He was fighting Joe Biden. As he says quite often now, they put millions of dollars into fighting Joe Biden, and then the Democrats played this dastardly trick and switched to a more popular candidate. His advisors are very clear what he needs to do: focus on the policy. A lot of voters had a better time of it in the economy under Trump, before COVID, that is. Inflation was negligible. He got to very high employment, and he was increasing America's fuel exports to the world. It was that the economy was doing very well. So stick to the economy. On immigration, his building the wall policy was pretty popular and had brought down irregular migration. Stick to what your policy on immigration. But Trump can't do that. He can't stick to just the what he sees as rather boring and dry policy issues. He has to go for character, and he can't, in a way, it seemingly help himself when it comes to insults, nicknames, attacking friends and family of the candidates, because he's as we know, he's a man of strong views, and he doesn't hold back. He's impossible for his advisors to put in a straitjacket. Once he's on stage and gets going,
he's off.
These rallies that can last an hour and a half can ramble on into insult. And of course, it only takes a few, and those steal all the headlines.
David, great to speak to you this afternoon. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
David Charter, the Associate US Editor of The Times. You've been talking about this too. This WhatsApp from Ross. Rick, you are underestimating the Roe versus Wade decision. That's the Supreme Court decision. because 51% of voters are women. Ross, they're talking about the abortion, the issue of how much it polarizes America and also how much it's going to play a role in this American election on November the 5th. And like David was saying there, Donald Trump pulling back on his hard line in many states on abortion in order to pull in more of those centrist voters.